everybody, and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is a show where you can ask anything that you like about politics, and you will get a great answer in response. And so, welcome, everybody. Where can you go to ask all your questions about politics without fear of getting roasted or judged or debated? Well, you can come right here, because this is the place where we don't do fights. We don't do arguments. We don't do debates. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So you can ask all those questions here, and we could try to clear up maybe who some of these people are, what these agencies do, what their abbreviations stand for, et cetera, et cetera. I don't believe in making fun of people for not knowing things or trying to learn new things. So you can ask however simple of a question as you like, and you will not get made fun of or roasted or teased or anything like that. What's up, Lillian? Is that Ilian? Something like that. Anyways, welcome to the live stream. Everybody is welcome here. If you are a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're something on the outskirts, if you're something in the middle, everybody is welcome. This is not a place where I'm going to fight you because we have different political beliefs. It is just good faith answers to all good faith questions. Quality engagement discussions, but never debates. We're not trying to own anybody. We are not trying to win any arguments. We're not trying to spike the football or anything. It is just, you got a question, I got an answer. Hopefully, I might not be able to answer everything. There are certain things that I know a lot about and certain things that I don't know anything about. So if maybe your question will be too complicated for me even. And then I will tell you that I don't know stuff. I will never pretend like I know things that I don't know. So yeah, just go ahead and throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here. There's no fighting here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. I don't believe in debates. I don't believe that they are productive. What's up, John? Great to see you again. What's up, Mike Green? Good to see you. I definitely did have a good Christmas. All right. Ilian says, maybe a bit of a personal question. What is your political orientation? I'm a progressive Democrat. That's the way that I describe myself. There are other labels that might fit into what I am: leftist, social democrat, democratic socialist, shit like that. But the thing that I find to be the most demonstrative of my actual beliefs, the politicians that I vibe with the most, are the ones that describe themselves as progressive Democrats. Cooper says, what are your views on abortion? So I myself am pro-choice. But even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for the Democratic Party, because so long as your goal is to decrease the number of abortions, Democrats actually accomplish that goal. Republicans do not. All that Republicans do is they make pregnancy more dangerous for women by making abortions illegal. And making abortions illegal does not decrease the number of abortions. It does not eliminate abortions. All it does is make pregnancy more dangerous for women. Okay, let's see here. Riley says TDD. I don't know what that means. Let's see here. All right, excellent first questions, everybody. Let's keep this party train moving right along. So if you got any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. No such thing as a dumb question. This is not a place for fighting. This is not a place for roasting or debating. It is just good faith answers to all good faith questions. I don't believe in debates. I don't think that they're productive. Ilian says, what is your opinion on the economic and political state of the West? Depending on which country you're talking about, it can be either okay or bad. Right now, the Western countries that used to align themselves with America are kind of under threat because America's allegiances are up for debate. And, some people might argue for sale. I might argue that myself, a lot of those European systems have kind of been engineered with the assumption that America was going to be there, that allegiance was going to be there, that partnership was going to be there, that free trade was going to be there. And now it is either in question or gone. And a new type of relationship between America and Europe and also, other trading partners in South America and Asia, like all of that is in chaos right now. And so, everybody's going to have to start making, calculations based on where they think America is going to go in the future, who is going to be bribing President Trump in the future, and who will potentially be making these kinds of decisions going forward based on how our elections will go this year and in 3 years. So yeah, it's fucking weird. I think it's bad, generally speaking. Like we want to try to like decrease global instability and chaos. Like that should be the general goal. And all the Trump administration has been able to do is increase it basically everywhere. Except China's killing it because of all of the stupid things that America has done under the Trump administration have given China a massive advantage going forward. And so I would say like China's like the big winner of the Trump administration. You know? Okay, and thank you to everybody who helped me reach my first gift goal. Cooper says, opinion on ICE. Short version, ICE is acting like a rogue agency. They are denying people their due process. They are breaking the law. They're acting barbarically, and they're not solving the problem. Like, I have nothing nice to say about ICE. Nothing nice about ICE. Derek Berenstein. But yeah, if you want me to go into more detail on that, I happily will. So yeah, thank you, Muzz King. Thank you, Kasha, for helping me reach my first gift goal. Zero says, I'm a Christian and have always been told that the Democratic Party was anti-Christian. Thoughts? The Democratic Party is not anti-Christian. You know, Zero, I'm happy to go into more detail on that, but I think the real culprit here is a culture war perpetuated by the right to try to convince people that the only way that you can be a good Christian is to vote Republican. The only way that you can be a real American is to vote Republican. And unless you are a Christian and a Republican, then you don't count as American. And I believe that is the thing the Democratic Party has been fighting against. It has been to protect freedom of religion. It has been to uphold the division between church and state, things like that. Diet Pepsi says, only voted for Trump because it was fun pissing off the libs. Well, then I hope it was worth it to have all of your costs go through the fucking roof just to own the libs. All right, Kingston, great to see you again. Spaceplum, good to see you again. Spaceplum says, what do you think of a federal judge denying Trump's administration access to search the Richmond materials used in the Comey case? So I don't know too much about that specific judgment, Spaceplum. I will say that I am not too concerned for all of the vindictive prosecutions that the Trump administration has been perpetuating, because not only are they nakedly vindictive, which is, you know, cause for getting cases thrown out of court, but they also are wildly incompetent. Like, they are messing up the simplest procedural rules involved with, you know, bringing a case to court and attempting to get a conviction. And so I don't know if that has anything to do with, you know, my guess is that that specific judgment has to do with their incompetence as opposed to anything substantive regarding the standing of the case. You know, I'm not a lawyer. This is just the things that I've picked up from listening to lawyers. All right, Kingston, I'll get to that question in a second. Lauren, great to see you again. Seaflon, great to see you again. Says, well, I agree with your culture war take. The left facilitates it too, just differently. You know, Seaflon, I've definitely heard that argument before, and I've heard it from people on the left as well. You know, people that I generally agree with, but that I still get into it with because for some reason, people like me, I guess we just love talking about politics, even if it's with people that we have like 10% daylight, and I'm trying to get rid of that 10%, you know? So I guess my question to you, Seaflon, is how do you see the left facilitating the culture war? Because the only way that I see the left facilitating culture war is people that describe themselves as being part of the left doing it themselves. But I don't see the party doing that. I don't see elected politicians doing that. I don't see reporters or content creators doing that, you know, like people with really big platforms. Yeah, whereas the culture war on the right is coming from the right. Like, the call is coming from inside the house. It is elected politicians. It is party leaders. It is the billionaires that are working with the Republican Party to try to, you know, dismantle our government, you know, shit like that. Garrett Kastner says communism, capitalism, or socialism. We have all three of those currently in America, and it's a mixed system. I think there are certain things about that mixed system that work really well. I just think maybe we're a little bit too heavily invested in the capitalism side, because we keep on seeing all these ways in which capitalism is failing to bring down healthcare costs, bring down housing costs, bring down education costs, match wages to productivity, and cost of living. And so where capitalism is failing in those regards, I think we need things like communism and socialism. We need employee-owned companies. We need state-run programs, things like that. Garrett says, what communism do we have in America? We have employee-owned companies like Publix grocery stores, like Bob's Red Mills. They make the oatmeal and shit like that. Tech Tyrant says, TT allows like nothing longer than a sentence in TikTok Live. How am I supposed to ask good questions? Well, people are doing it, Tech Tyrant. So, I just say, give it your best shot. Independent Outsider Dave says, as a comedian, how do you deal with fascist acts of current administration beyond calling it out? It's interesting. I do think that the culture has an impact on the sort of like the conversation, the cultural conversation, but it's not enough. It's not enough for us to make movies and tell jokes about how authoritarian and fascist and similar to Germany in the 1930s and 40s America is right now. Hold on a second. Becky Cuba says Trump is the best president. And while I disagree with that, that is not why I am blocking Becky. I am blocking Becky because she did not ask a question. I do not care if you have different political opinions than me, but ask a question, be part of the conversation. If you're not trying to own anybody or roast anybody, then you are free to stay. And there are plenty of right-wing people who are regulars to this show who will tell you that I am extremely fair on this point. So, anyways, I think we need more, basically. I think we need more than comedians making jokes about this. But I do think that it's an important part of the equation. I think that we need, real organization, political activism, and, informing the public, voting, shit like that. Okay, Michael says, do you think Keir Starmer is a terrible PM? I do 100%. So that's not my area of expertise, I would say. Because I am a lefty, I tend to vibe with other lefty governments. So I am going to be more for the left-wing parties of Canada than the right-wing parties of Canada, and left-wing parties of the UK as opposed to the right-wing parties of the UK. And so I don't know what mistakes Keir Starmer is making, if he's too far to the left or too far to the right for you. I don't know where you live on that spectrum. But I will say that there's too much in our political in our political conversation these days about people, left-wing politicians, not being good enough. But I don't see that same standard being held up for the right. Like, it seems like Democrats and left-wing parties can never be good enough for people to justify voting for them, and the right-wing parties can never be bad enough for people to justify voting against them, in my view. Peter Polder says, are there other political parties? There are. Aurora says, do you think the MAGA crowd will say they were never MAGA in a few years? I think that there are certain people who will. I think that as it becomes out of fashion to be associated with right-wing extremism, the way that the MAGA movement currently is, that we're going to start seeing people jumping ship. There's a book that I have not read yet about this very thing, Aurora, called One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This, something like that. And I've heard interviews with the author, and it seems pretty cool. So that's definitely on my reading list, and I would recommend it for everybody, just based on the interviews that I've heard, and the title is dope as hell. Average Joe, great to see you again. The Arch Trader says, do you think first-generation immigrants or very recent immigrants should be allowed to run for office? Arch Trader, that's a really good question. I don't know exactly where the law stands right now. I believe right now the law is that if you are a very recent or first-generation immigrant, then you are allowed to run for any political office besides president. And it seems kind of fair to me, like, I understand that there might be some issues of allegiance, but I haven't really seen any examples of people getting elected to public office and serving their country of origin or their birth country. What I have seen are politicians getting elected and then serving whatever country fits their either political or financial interests. And I think that is a way bigger issue than making it harder for immigrants to run for political office. Like, let's deal with corruption first. All right. Average Joe says, there's been a lot of focus on the male loneliness epidemic lately. Do you think the underlying cause is a lack of confidence, online parasocial relationships, or marital expectations not catching up with improvements in women's education and economic success? That's a great question, Average Joe. And where all of your questions are concerned, I think the answer is, I think it's really complicated. I think it's a whole bunch of things that have all sort of like happened at the exact same time. We are seeing a billionaire funded move towards authoritarianism, partnering with a sort of like religious extremist faction. And part of that religious extremist faction involves a sort of like antiquated view of what everybody's roles should be as a man and as a woman. And so, as part of that project, the right-wing propaganda machine has been fueling these ideas about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And thereby we are seeing a bunch of guys who believe that they suck because they do not fit that specific description. That feeds into a difficulty in socializing because they believe, well, I'm not a multimillionaire and I haven't, had sex with 1,000 women. That means I still have a lot of work to do before I could even attempt to go out into society and make friends, because otherwise I'm just going to be a beta cuck soy boy. And then all of the women that I want are going to cheat on me. And I'm going to get stomped to death by people that are much more wealthy and powerful. And so that drives people further into online spaces, which is feeding them even more of that propaganda, And then, like you said, that's like one slice of the pie. There's like so many other things going on there. Independent Outsider Dave D says, do you have a YouTube channel? I do. Let's see here. All the King's Men is used a whole bunch of numbers as book recommendation. Is that the Watergate book, or is there a different book of that title? Because I saw the movie, All the President's Men. Abdul says, why Republicans are against free healthcare for everyone, like in Europe, and for sure costs less. So where right-wing parties are concerned, Abdul, the rubber really meets the road with what do the rich want? And I know that there are people out there who will tell you that every politician is corrupt and owned by the billionaire class, but there really is a substantive difference between how left-wing parties are directed by the billionaire class and how right-wing parties are directed by the billionaire class. And where right-wing parties are directed by the billionaire class, it is to oppose any regulation of the healthcare industry, up to and including socializing it, even if it's cheaper for the public, even if it provides better service, because it protects those billionaires' bottom line, because it makes those billionaires a lot richer. And I think that it is instructive. I think it is illuminating to focus on that issue specifically, where the Democratic Party is the party of universal health care, but we do have our more centrist members and potentially our more corrupt members who are still advocating against that. But at the same time as they're advocating against that, they are also doing things to try to make healthcare more affordable that do fit in line with the Democratic platform of being pro-working class, pro-99%. And potentially, as we primary and get rid of those centrist or corporate Democrats, we will have a majority of Democrats in elected office who are going to try to make universal health care a thing. But you don't see that happening in the Republican Party. It's getting worse in the Republican Party as opposed to getting better, where it's getting better in the Democratic Party. And we see that right now in America. We see the tripling of people's healthcare costs as being a direct, a direct reflection of how the Republican Party is only getting better on this issue and others, in relation to what their big dollar donors are telling them that they should be, they should be focusing on. Alrighty, let's see here. Excellent question. All right, and thank you to everybody who helped me reach my second gift goal of the day, Dan Blackroyd, great to see you again. You're the GOAT. Muzz King, great to see you again. And Independent, I think it says Outlet is your name there. That is pretty cool. Penis Broke says, you are Dean Withers. I don't know who that is. Is that a cool person? I am Parker. I think I know who that is. Are these cool people? Are you saying this like it is an insult? Or are you saying this like it is a nice thing? The Truth says 13% Democrats. I don't know what that means. User a bunch of numbers says this is a different book. What's that book about? Fletch Lives Again. Great to see you again. Says changed anything. The Trump-Stein files released so far seem extremely damaging to Trump. Do you think that they have changed anything? So I'm not 100% sure, Fletch Lives, because a lot of the information that's coming out is some of it's misinformation. Some of it is uncorroborated actual information that is coming out of those files. For example, the story about him watching somebody murder a baby in a lake and shit like that. Like, all of that stuff really is in the files, but they were unsubstantiated. They were not proven. And so it's really difficult. In addition, because there's so much more information that is going to be released, just parsing through it is going to be so strange. And the way that the American culture has been, segmented into a million tiny pieces, it is not going to be clear who knows what and who believes what as far as like those files are concerned. I think the net benefit is basically going to be that it's damaging for the Trump administration and Republicans. But I don't know if it's going to be like a clean, break. I think it's going to be weird and jagged and, trickling out like a leaky faucet kind of a shit. Alrighty. John Abbott says healthcare is also a military recruiting tool. Socialized healthcare would cause a decline in enlistment rates. Yes, John Abbott, that is an excellent point as well. Military industrial complex doesn't like it either, I guess. Let's see here. Google Eye Enjoyer says, would you beat Joseph Broz Tito in a fistfight? I don't know who that is. Mark Proud American says, how much do you love Trump? Exactly 0. Mello says, remember, this was all preventable if Dems nominated Bernie in 2016. It wasn't inevitable. The Democrats didn't nominate Hillary Clinton in Mello in 2016. Hillary Clinton won the primary. Mello. That has nothing to do with Democrats preferring one candidate over the other. That's how the primary process worked out. Mello, would you like me to talk more about that? Let me know. Mesh says, we talk and the things that really need to improve: health insurance for all, no unalives. I don't know what that question is. H Variety says, did Charlie Kirk deserve to die? Absolutely not. I think Charlie Kirk was a terrible person. I think that he was destructive for our political discourse. But there should be no extrajudicial murders and assassinations that take place in this country. We should not be moving towards more political violence. We should be moving away from them. I'm anti-death penalty. I'm obviously going to be against just straight up assassinating and murdering people that you don't agree with. Okay, let's see here. Wonder Life says, healthcare does not equal health insurance. It feels like left is pro health insurance. No, the left is pro healthcare. There are way more people in the left who are trying to move us towards a system that has zero health insurance than there are people who are trying to work within the health insurance market to try to make it less expensive for people. Let's see here. Dan Blackroyd says, no podcast host is worth a lifetime murder sentence. That is 100% accurate. Mark, Proud American, says, Kirk was terrible for speaking his mind, ? He didn't hurt anybody. I would argue that he did hurt people, Mark, Proud American, because he was a liar and he lied to people. That is how he made his living. He went out there and debated people, but his debates were just making shit up. And if you were able to catch him in making things up, he would just move on to a different topic or just wouldn't release that video. If you weren't able to catch him in a lie because you did not have that specific data point memorized, then it looked like he was owning the libs and advocating for the kind of politicians who are making healthcare more expensive, who are cutting government watchdogs for things like pollution and shit like that. Like, that is actively hurting people. He was part of the right-wing manosphere that is creating these toxic ideals that men are forced to then try to live up to. So that is increasing this like crisis of desperation. and despair among America's males. That is hurting people 100%. Yeah, he's not a bad guy for speaking his mind. He's a bad person because he lied to people. Mark Proud American says, Charlie Kirk, one of greatest Americans of all time. You are wrong. No, I'm not. And that's also not a question. I don't even think that you are from America based on the way that you spelled that. So you are out of here. Okay, let's see here. Troy Duncan says, name a lie. Troy, I can Google that for you if you like, but also you have the ability to. Are you aware that PolitiFact has rated Charlie Kirk as a pants on fire human being? Mello says, do you think Charlie Kirk was a racist? I don't know if he was racist or if he was racist for political advantage or if he was like racist, internally. But I do not believe that you say out loud into a microphone that is then being broadcast to millions of people that when your pilot is black, you're worried about the plane going down. That's a racist thing to say. End of story. Okay. Yeah. So there's this thing that happens with people on the internet where I will tell you that, something is a thing. And then you will be like, well, give me an example then. And I'll go, well, I mean, you can Google it, or I'm just going to have to Google it during the live stream here. And then you say, oh, so I guess you don't know because, Let's see here. Patriarchal chauvinism. What was it? He said that Donald Trump's policies towards oil and gas created hundreds of thousands of jobs in West Virginia. And that's just like a blatant lie. There aren't hundreds of thousands of unemployed people in West Virginia. Okay, Blooming Pottery says, any updates on the Rockland County thing? So unfortunately, that case has been thrown out, and it appears to have been thrown out on procedural issues as opposed to anything substantive. If you Google the people who are involved in that court case, they will tell you that they're not done fighting for this. What I will say is that if you are concerned about election integrity, do the work. Do the work of making sure that your elections are safe. Put pressure on your elected representatives, your Secretary of States and shit like that, and ask them, are we using any voting machines that could potentially be compromised? What is the oversight to make sure that these machines are counting votes accurately? And if you're not happy with the answer, call them again, start a political action group, join Indivisible, et cetera, et cetera. Wonder Life says, do you believe regulation is the primary mechanism of corruption? No, regulation is part of the way that we prevent corruption, and getting rid of regulations just like willy-nilly is part of how corruption is able to flourish. Your mom says, this is so embarrassing, but I kind of, your mom, I think maybe we've hooked up in the past. Like, does that sound familiar to you? This is a joke for the regulars on the live stream. Anyways, your mom says, how do you feel about our friends on the left that are just conspiracy nuts now? I mean, I don't think that anybody should be, diving deep into conspiracy theories that have no sort of like substantive data behind them. If you are believing in a conspiracy theory as like a fun thing to do, but like I don't personally believe that X, Y, or Z happened, or I think this person was responsible for this thing. Like, I don't think there's necessarily any harm to that. But if you're basing your like life decisions and the way that you're voting based on those conspiracy theories, then I think it's probably, probably a problem. And I don't think that anybody should be doing it, whether you are a right-leaning person or a left-leaning person. Brant Mears says, do you think Trump will finish his term? I'm pretty sure he will. The only thing that would stop him, I think, is if he passes away. I do not believe that the Republican Party or anybody in his cabinet has the stones to actually try to hold him accountable for all the rules that he is breaking, or things like that. Troy Duran says the search for an intelligent leftist continues. Troy, I think I'm pretty intelligent, but I see what you're doing here. Like, I see you casting aspersions to try to get me to fight you or some shit like that. I'll just let you know, Troy, that that is not what we do here. And you can either ask a question in good faith, or I can boot you. Those are your options. And let me know which one you would rather do. Let's see here. Wonder Flife says regulators seem to always be getting caught either stock trading or accepting bribes. Yeah, well, that's why you need oversight of the regulators as well. Okay, Spellshulke. Ooh, I see what you did there. Says, do you think Trump has any real succession plans? I don't think that he cares, honestly. You know, I think he probably favors Ivanka over all of his kids. I don't think he really cares who takes over for him that isn't last name Trump. New Sarah Domes is opinion of the Libertarian Party. If you look at every place that has tried libertarianism, those towns end up getting taken over by bears, and so that's probably not great. If you read the book Dark Money, you find out that the entire libertarian movement was astroturfed by the billionaire class because they're trying to dismantle government, and they can murder everybody without there being any kind of legal consequences. Okay, Kate the Grateful, great to see you again, says, why does MAGA constantly project? Are they just delusional? No, you know, some people, they're just, you know, recycling the things that they heard on whatever social media or news channel they're watching. Some people do it specifically to infuriate you, you know, and so I recommend not engaging with that sort of shit. It's a tactic, you know, it is a tactic to make it seem like both sides are the same. It is a tactic to confuse and irritate, you know, just ignore, I would say. Bertz says, hey, what do you think about independent candidates? I don't really have any, you know, specific love for independent candidates. Until we have ranked choice voting, it's really going to be impossible for any independent candidate to make any make any headways. And so if we want to empower independent candidates, we need to have ranked choice voting, and the Democratic Party is the only party that's open to ranked choice voting. So we need to vote for Democrats in order to get more, in order to get more independence in there. Tech Zone says, are you gay? I am not. Thank you for your question, Tech Zone. John Abbott says, and they don't even get taken over by the fun type of bears. Kingston says, so I believe MAGA runs on something called moral monopolization, which means only one voice counts. To them, moral absolutism which is centered on the self. Oh, that's an interesting take. Kingston, I don't really know. I don't have anything to add there, I suppose. All right, your mom says, if you could make Democrats magically fix one thing, what would you fix? That's a really good question. Do you mean like fix about the Democratic Party or fix about the government specifically? Yeah, I think probably like, you know, electoral reform is probably where I would go. You know, like get rid of partisan gerrymandering, rebalance the Senate map, get rid of the Electoral College, fix campaign finance so that billionaires are not able to, you know, purchase politicians and shit like that. Let's see here. Special cases, GOP succession plan for Trump rather than his personal succession. I think that's what people are fighting about right now. I think the reason why you're seeing people like, you know, Megyn Kelly and Ben Shapiro go at it at CPAC is because they're all fighting over who's going to inherit the throne. Scott Clower says he did pardon the Honduran president that ran all the cocaine that favors Don Jr. That's very funny. Yeah, he's protecting the coke supply for his own child. That's very funny. Speaking of which, did you guys see that fucking clip of Marco Rubio? Like, you know, I'm not going to say whether or not that dude was on coke or not. Like, I don't want to get in trouble for, you know, making claims that have not been proven in a court of law. But did you guys see the video of him doing all the things that you do when you are high on yay? Like, did you guys see that? I thought it was fake. I was like, there's no way this is fucking real. And then I saw like 3 other videos from different angles on different topics. And I was like, that dude is fucking railed to the tits, man. That's exactly what it looks like when you're doing that. You know, I have never partaken myself, but I have spent a lot of time with people who partook regularly, and I was like, that is what's happening right there. That is what is happening right there. Your mom says, God forbid a man wants to be a little chill. The drug we're talking about is the opposite of chill. Your mom, like, I don't know how much you know about that specific thing, but Yeah, man. I do not think that you should be doing that shit and then doing a fucking press conference. You know, like if that's your vibe, then in the comfort of your own home or at the club or something, man. Okay, Aidan. Aladdin says Israel Palestine. That's very funny. Secretary of Yayo, Marco Rubio. That's funny. I mean, do you have a specific question about Israel Palestine, Aiden, that you'd like to ask, or you just want me to cook, ma'am? Real Benda says, why did Mamdani appoint that EMS person as FDNY chief with no firefighting experience? I don't know what that story is specifically, Real Benda, so sorry about that. Wonder of Life says, how do you feel about injury lawsuits? Drives healthcare costs up. Wonder of Life. That's a very good question, Wonder of Life. The questions you're asking are very specific, and it feels a little bit like, I'm going to say this, and I mean it with all the love and respect in my heart, because you're not being a jerk on the live stream, so I'm not going to get a boot you or anything like that. But I will say that the questions that you're asking, they kind of feel like they are in the realm of misinformation to help out the conservative parties. Like, healthcare costs aren't high because of insurance companies and greedy insurance companies, telling people they can't get their cancer treatments just so that they can buy another boat. It's because of personal injury lawsuits. And while I am not going to sit here on my live stream and tell you that there aren't potentially some regulations or changes in the law that we could make to spurious lawsuits or shit like that. But I think that the bad guy here is clear, and it is the insurance companies, All right, Scott Clower says, if we had universal health care, it wouldn't be such a dollar amount. Interesting. Wonder Life says that you're a libertarian. Mostly. That's interesting. Have you read Dark Money, Wonder of Life? I recommend that to everybody who's libertarian. Let's get into it. 2025 says all of those risks are baked into the premiums. The rest is greed. Yeah, let me know, Wonder of Life. I'm really curious to hear your take on that book. And let's get into it. 2025. That seems pretty accurate to me. Lauren says, my insurance has held up and denied my life-saving meds for over a month. That's fucking bullshit, Lauren, and that infuriates me. I'm really sorry to hear that. Average Joe says, do you think Rubio is so adamant about regime change in Venezuela so that he can have more access to whatever he was on that one day? No, I don't think so, Average Joe, but it's very funny. Aiden says they want to expand settlements, completely destroying the West Bank and more Gazans to Somaliland. That's why Israel recognized Somaliland this weekend, the first country in the world to do so. That all sounds pretty accurate to me, Aiden. I am on the records being firmly anti the Netanyahu administration, firmly anti the kind of extreme right-wing politics that come out of Israel that make settler violence okay and empower the IDF to do war crimes and shit like that. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, I think it's disgusting. I think that what the Netanyahu government is doing is disgusting. Okay, special cases. Organ insurance can confirm losses from fraud are used to excuse excessive premium hikes. Thank you for that clarification, Special K. I appreciate that. Happy early New Year to you, Bertz. Lauren says I had to go to the ER 4 times because insurance won't approve my meds because they're $3K. That fucking sucks, Lauren. I'm really sorry to hear that. It's fucking infuriating, man. Yeah. Honestly, I don't know what else I can say about it except that the work that I do is to try to make it so that shit like that doesn't happen anymore. Anyways, Crocodile says, thoughts on abortion. I am personally pro-choice, but even if you're pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Democrats actually decrease the number of abortions. Republicans don't. They only make pregnancy more dangerous for women. And I'm happy to get into more details on that, Crocodile, if you would like. Bennett says, do you support infinite immigration or not? I don't know if I support infinite immigration. I mean, immigrants generally are a net positive on our country, especially as we still have a growth style economic system, particularly since our population and birth numbers are in decline. And so, yeah, but infinite seems a little drastic, I would say. Neo-libertarian Flangelist says, add me. That's not a question. Richard Kirkpatrick says, universal income around 67,000 for all. I like that, Richard. I believe in things like universal basic income, universal healthcare, universal, public education. How we are able to make that stuff work within our current fiscal system is an open question. But should we transition to those? 100%. Will it be hard? You got it, buddy. It's going to be fucking really difficult. Not in the least of which because there are going to be people who have a lot of money and power who will be incentivized to keep those things from coming to be. It will be hard. Mistakes will be made. But we should 100% be moving towards those systems without question. Okay, John Abbott says the woman Mamdani appointed is 31 years with EMS and has many first woman to do blank labeled to her name with the FDNY. But she was never a firefighter, so conservatives are ignoring the rest and claiming that she is a DEI hire. That sounds right, John Abbott. That tracks. You're extremely reliable source of information, in my opinion. So yeah, whoever asked that Mamdani question seems like she has a lot of EMS experience. And seems like she is qualified for that position in other ways. JXM says, is it worth it to study politics? I think so, 100%. Richard Chapman says, would institutions raise cost of living to take away your universal income? Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yes. And, that is part of the reason, we don't want to see the cost of everything go up because suddenly Americans have more money in their pocket because of universal basic income. And so that's going to have to come with other regulations, of course. That's where the rubber meets the road, with those issues. Okay, Benda says, what do you think about the death of Charlie Kirk and the celebration of it, many on the left? That is a really good question, Benda. So here's the thing. There are people out there, random people on the internet, some of them nameless, faceless, random number generated, screen names, no profile picture, etc., who will say that they are left wing or right wing, and they will say fucking atrocious shit about people. They will celebrate the death of Rob Reiner. They will celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk. They will celebrate the fact that Nancy Pelosi's husband got attacked with a hammer when he was standing in his house in his underwear. They will celebrate when Democratic state senators are targeted and assassinated in Minnesota. And yes, that is the problem. But to suggest that the left was largely celebrating when Charlie Kirk was assassinated is an inaccurate thing to say. Because if you look at the people with microphones, if you look at elected politicians and party leaders, content creators, political influencers, all of them condemn political violence in the strongest possible language, Benda. But we do not see that same thing happening on the right. Where political violence is concerned on the right, and again, I'm not talking about the base, the voters. I'm talking about the people with the microphones, the elected politicians, the people with a lot of money and power, Elon Musk, Alex Jones, Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, etc. All of them, their attitude towards political violence is it's fine so long as it's right against left. But if it ever comes to us, then that's the only time that it's unacceptable. If you want more details on that, Benda, I'm happy to provide them. but there is a substantive difference between the way that party leaders on the left treat political violence and party leaders on the right treat political violence. It is not a coincidence that political violence started going up in this country in 2015 when Donald Trump started running for president. 23 Peanut Friday says, thoughts on social democracy? I guess it depends on how you define that. 23 Peanut Friday. Okay. TechZone says, do you think gays should be banned from public spaces? No, I do not. Gay people are just regular people like you and me, and they deserve the same rights as everybody else. Daniel says, thoughts on Tim Walz signing off on taxpayer money being spent on fraudulent daycares? So I have not seen any reporting, Daniel, to say that Tim Walz was involved in that in any way, or even that he was too negligent to catch that. This is a fraud that was being run by some white dude and is being called the Somali COVID fraud case or some shit like that. So there's a lot of reframing of this issue to try to make Democrats or Somali immigrants look bad. And I have not seen any reporting to back up those claims at all. Stormrider says, I am left, so is my algorithm. Never saw celebrating. Yeah, same here, man. Benda says, it was. Many of my leftist friends, even my class do, just by experience. I don't think so. So Benda, that's what we call anecdotal evidence. And it is not definitive, shall we say. First of all, we don't know who you are. Your profile pic is Baby Yoda. You don't have your last name. You could be making all of this shit up. Even if you're not, maybe you're just from a place and you're hanging out with a bunch of kids who fucking suck. And that's the reason why they were doing that to you, you know? Again, I don't care what the voters do, you know, because we could do it fucking tit for tat until the fucking cows come home. That person said that shitty thing about left-wing violence. That person said shitty things about right-wing violence, et cetera, et cetera. I'm concerned about the people who lead the discussion, the people with power, the people with huge fan bases, the people with electoral power and money. What are they doing? And it's not even a fucking close race, Benda. It's coming from the right. Full stop. It's coming from the right. Okay. Rena, great to see you again. Hope you had a good Christmas. Drew Bug says, I love Trump. That's not a question. So you are getting blocked. Congratulations. Okay. Daniel says, I think Tim Walz is going to be in big, big trouble. Not boy, that Tim. Respects for answering me. Okay, Daniel, but just want to let you know that I was this close to blocking you for that comment. I literally just told you that there's no way to connect Tim Walz to that scandal, and yet you are celebrating as though I just proved you right. And so ask a question, be respectful, because I did not care for the tone of that comment, and so you're on thin ice. Okay, Kate the Grateful says, I don't understand how Trump is still in power after the release of those files, because people in his own party are bending the knee. People with a lot of money are incentivized to keep him in power. He still has control of the MAGA base. So, you know, until that political calculus changes, there we go. Jose Martinez, I have no information for you on that question. Captain J-Rod says, what's your opinion on Fuentes America First movement? Nick Fuentes is a proud misogynist and racist. He is a proud neo-Nazi. He is a piece of shit. He fucking sucks. Nobody should listen to him. Nobody should pay attention to him. He is astroturfed by extremely rich right-wing psychopaths. And it is a fault of our media system that people are able to use money to get attention for people that are that disgusting and destructive as he am. Sour says, what ideology do you agree with? I am a progressive Democrat. All right, so I was just reported for harassment and bullying. My regulars will know that this is something that happens to me regular on my show, even though I do not harass or bully anybody. If anybody could tell me where the harassment and bullying happened, I would fucking love to learn how I can keep this from happening in the future. If whoever reported me for harassment wants to speak up and let me know. Yeah, Daniel, the way you phrase that makes me think it was you, you know. Unfucking believable, man. Yeah, for anybody who claims that the right is all about free speech, they're literally silencing me because they don't like the things that I'm saying, you know? Harry says, would allowing blue light workers certain tax breaks be economically viable? Do you mean blue collar workers, Harry? I'm not really sure what blue light workers. That solar guy says, where you reported, I'm literally conservative, but love your openness to debates. Yeah, that solar guy. This is the problem with the way that these social media platforms operate, because it is in the best interest of the people running these platforms to have a, to make the job of left-wing content creators harder, like myself, then they do it, So yeah, it's fucking bullshit. But what are you gonna do? This is part of the reason why I advocate for voting against the Republican Party, guys, because this is some fucking Republican Party shit happening right here. Oh, blue light. Gotcha. Yeah, let me think about that, Harry. Not really sure. Let's see here. Benda says, do you know that more than 80% of money went to left-wing campaigns? Also, W take on Fuentes. I think you mean, that means that it's a good take, right, Benda? 80% of money went to left-wing campaigns. I don't really think that that's an accurate statistic, Benda. I meant money from the fellow with the island went to left-wing campaigns. I don't believe that, Benda. I don't believe that at all. Big Tom Carter says, asking as an open-minded independent, do you think there will be elections in 2028? So yes, 100% there will be elections in 2028, Big Tom, but I need to put a caveat on that, which is that Donald Trump and the Republican Party are going to try to stop it. They are going to try to do things to steal that election. They are going to do shady shit. They are going to do voter suppression. They are going to, potentially try to use ICE or, the National Guard to intimidate people away from the polls. Mark Elias, who is an election lawyer, is saying, like, he's worried about just road closures. Like, are they going to be artificially creating traffic on the way to polls? They're going to close polling locations and DMVs in Democratic areas to try to make voting for them harder. If they can do it, if they can get away with it, they will. But that just means that we have to work harder to make sure that they are not successful. So yeah, that's the short version, Big Tom. That solar guy says the best situations arise where there are disagreeing voices, but heard voices. Daniel says, I would never report the host. He's doing debates and answering questions. Respect. I appreciate that, Daniel. Again, you could be a sleeper agent. I have no idea. We're about 8 minutes away from the live stream being over, so I'm not really too pressed about it. This is just kind of like, what do you call it? This is table stakes. This is the cost of doing business. So yeah, until I have more evidence that you are responsible for this, Daniel, you're safe. But I just want to let my suspicions be known. If it ends up being true, I want it on record that I called that shit. Okay, your mom says, like they've always been, however, they can't just stop elections like some on the left suggest. But yeah, that is accurate, your mom. Brant Meir says, if you could throw any politician into office as president, who would it be? Ooh, that's a really good question. Probably like Chris Murphy, I think. I just think he's whip smart and, great at messaging. He's not really a high profile guy. He's not an AOC or a Joe Manchin or anything. He just does the work, and I appreciate that. Vicky Howard says, you skipped over the question about Minnesota. I didn't see it. Sometimes I get a lot of comments, and so getting your comment answered is a lottery, and it is not everybody gets their thing answered. Benda says, okay, so 87% of Island Guys donations went to Democrats. I don't believe you, Benda. I do not believe that is accurate. So, sorry. You want to send me a DM with some evidence to that? I'm not going to Google it. I'm confident that it is not accurate. Big PBJ says, what would actually take for the traditional conservative to flip on the MAGA base? It depends. There's a sliding scale. It's not you're either MAGA or you're a regular person. There are soft Trump voters. There are people that hate Trump but still vote for him because they like X, Y, or Z policies. There are single issue voters who are like, I hate everything about Trump. I see the corruption. I see all the shitty things with immigration, but he is anti-abortion and I am pro-life. And so, etc. You know, it's complicated is all I would say. I just think we just all have to keep on doing the work and keep on getting the accurate information out there and talking to the people that know us and love us and respect us. And then hopefully we can start chipping away at that foundation. Vicky Howard says, what do you think about what's going on in Minnesota? I'm assuming that you are talking about the COVID money scandal. It was a scandal that was led by some white dude, and yet it's being called like the Somali scandal. Tim Walz had nothing to do with it, and yet it's being called Tim Walz's Somali scandal. So yeah, there's a lot of misinformation about it. Vicky Howard's, it doesn't really seem like there's any there. I haven't seen any substantive reporting to say that this is a negative on Somali immigrants or Tim Walz or the Democratic Party in general. Okay, let's see here. Rory Powell says anti-abortion versus pro-life. I mean, I guess anti-abortion would be people that don't believe in making abortion illegal, but do believe in, you know, the kinds of policies that actually make there be fewer abortions. Rory Powell, is that what you're getting at? Rini Roxo says, why are such lies about abortion allowed? How do we stop misinformation? It's healthcare. So Rini, misinformation is like the problem, I think. That is the problem in our current political environment. The fact that every human being that you meet could potentially have a completely different idea of what is going on in the country and in our government is a huge fucking problem. Why is it allowed? Freedom of speech. You know, there's a lot of, there's a lot of leeway where freedom of speech is concerned. Like hate speech, for example, is still covered under freedom of speech. I don't know how to solve that problem via regulation, you know, via making speech less free. But I think that if you and me do the work of communicating the accurate information to people, and then everybody that we talk to does so also, then we can, I don't know, maybe we can undo this trend. Maybe we can get everybody on the same page together. Okay, Vicky Howard says, have you not seen Nick Shirley's videos about the daycare centers where there's no kids? So I am familiar with these videos, Vicky Howard, because I have seen creators who are debunking them. And so the fraud is real. Like there are real people perpetuating this fraud, but there is misinformation about it, particularly where it is targeting Somali immigrants, and particularly where they're saying it is the fault of the Democratic Party, Vicky Howard. So I would just say you got to be really careful. You got to double check your information because, yeah, a lot of times they make these videos look a very specific way to perpetuate that idea. Okay, Bendis says, do you think children should be allowed to transition their gender? I believe in allowing the experts to do the things that will create a greater life for children and adults. And a slow, safe, and data-driven process by which children are able to dip their toes into the waters of different gender identities seems to be working great. I don't believe in a blanket ban for people that are under 18. But I also don't think that we should be every child that's ever said, I think I might want to be a girl or I think I might want to be a boy means that we should go chop off their junk right away. But there is a middle ground, a responsible middle ground that I believe 99% of the people that are involved in this are a part of. Okay, your mom says hate speech absolutely should not be censored by the government. What goes around comes around, in my opinion. Yeah, you know, I'm not advocating for any specific policy regarding regulating speech. I just think something should be done about it. And I hope that you know, until we can get some sort of regulation that can't be weaponized, that cannot be a violation of the First Amendment, I think that we should do the work of making sure that people are getting accurate information. And thank you to everybody for helping me reach my last gift goal of the day. Ms. Weaver, Muzz King, thank you so much. We are at an hour, and so we're going to start wrapping things up. I'm going to do one more just for shits and giggles. We're going to do the big roses. We're going to do 20 of the big roses. Okay, but yeah, I'll do some final questions. But before I get to the final questions, just want to say thank you to everybody who was on the live stream. Thank you for all your questions, your gifts, your comments, your likes, your shares. Your support is the reason why I'm able to continue doing the show. I love doing the show, but I also think maybe it's a net positive for the culture, for the conversation, for the zeitgeist. So I'm hoping that you guys think so too, and then you will help me continue this show, into the new year, etc., etc. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store you can buy things from on my website, and you can send gifts and become super fans and subscribers on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. If you have Amazon Prime and you want to help me out in a way that is completely free to you, just subscribe to my Twitch profile, to my Twitch show, using your Amazon Prime account. I get $2, cost you $0. Thank you to everybody who has done that already. Triska, Lauren, and Kayslo. Thank you to my super fans on TikTok, Susie, Sean, Dean, and Hot Sauce. And thank you to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. We're doing a special show on Wednesday that is starting an hour early, so keep your eyes peeled for that. My wife and I are having a very special day for New Year's Eve, and we're going to get started early. We're going to go see Avatar in 3D, and we're going to do it the right way, if you catch my meaning, everybody. Let's see here. Check me out on Discord. I love the Discord. It's a great way to get in touch. It's a great way to form community with other people who are fans of the show. And there are recommendations on there for books and podcasts and organizations that you should 100% be donating your money and time to. If there are questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can get in touch with me via my Discord channel. I want to be a resource for you guys to be better informed and better involved in politics. And so if I can do that for you, I want you to use me. I want you to use me until you use me up. Kimberly said, well, that sounded kind of kinky. It's not kinky, but it is something I could get tagged for community violations if I discuss. Let's just say we might be spending a little time in the garden before we go, or I will, at least, because she is pregnant. Benda says, what do you think about Hassan Piker, his support of terrorists and possible shocking of his dog? So I think that anybody who is as popular as Hassan, who is part of the left wing, and who is potentially making certain ideas and even just getting involved in politics more popular with young people, I think is net positive. I don't agree with everything that dude says. I have found myself listening to him in interviews and getting really fucking annoyed with that dude sometimes. But I do think he's a net positive. I don't think that he is supporting terrorists. I think that rhetoric is probably hyperbolic based on him advocating for the citizens in Palestine. If he said other things that are much more like pro-terrorist, then I'm open to hearing them. So, send me that information. And about his shocking his dog, I don't know. There's discourse around that. I think it's kind of weird the way that people on the left will get dissected and dragged through the mud for things. It almost seems as though people are incentivized to, to silence left-wing voices or discredit left-wing voices for things like that. I will say that dogs are resilient, and so what might seem like a big deal, discipline-wise to you and I is completely fine for them. But yeah, I'm not an expert. I haven't seen the deep dives into whether or not he is doing animal abuse on his dog, but I just doubt that he is. Okay, Z Gardaday says, hope your wife is doing okay. Pregnancy can be rough. It absolutely is hard. And god damn it, if this does not convince, this has done so much to convince me that God is not real, because no human being deserves this. And every woman goes through this. That's fucking bananas, man. And I was talking about this with my wife. How would we restructure society and pregnancy if it was men that got pregnant? And I was like, women shouldn't have to deal with this shit. Like there should be a spa, a free spa that every pregnant woman can go to for as little of a time or as long as they want while they're pregnant. And they should all be able to work remotely or just take that whole fucking 9 months off just to be pregnant, and they can get massages and good medical care and shit like that. That's how it would work if men got pregnant, because it looks like it fucking sucks, man. It fucking sucks. Woo-wee! Okay, Benda says, have you not seen the video where he leaves a music video where they sing about starting a war? I have not seen that one, Benda. Okay, let's see here. Rini Roxo says, thoughts on making the focus policies instead of the people in politics, not you, but general discourse. That's a really good question, Rini, and the answer there, I think, is that we kind of have to meet people where they are, where I don't think that people are as focused on voting for policy. I think that it's so much more complicated why people vote and who they vote for. And it does have to do with things like stupid things like, is this a candidate that you want to get a beer with? Sometimes I find that single issue voters can tend to be tricked to vote for really bad people because they care so much about one issue, where I think it should be a much more, complicated discussion of all the ideas. Misinformation and propaganda makes that thing even more complicated. Like, in a perfect world, I think that we should all just be like voting for data-driven policies that work. But in reality, there's like some trust that is involved there. Like, we have to trust that this person is going to deal with the thing that we have not been able to predict in a way that we are going to support. One of the reasons why I have never been for Donald Trump or his ilk in government is because I don't trust them to deal with catastrophes. I don't trust them to deal with the things that we have not predicted. And COVID-19 is the perfect example of that. When people like me were saying Trump shouldn't be president because what if there's like a pandemic? Like, I don't trust that he's going to be able to handle it well. And then there was, and then he didn't. In a really big way, he didn't. So I think that there is some value to, to looking at the actions of the people in politics and looking at their character. I don't know if it's everything, but it's definitely, it's definitely something. Benda, you can send me the link, Benda, but I'll be honest with you, I kind of don't care. Like, I think that there are people out there who are saying that he did nothing wrong. Oh, you're talking about the terrorist thing? Yeah, send me that. Absolutely, send me that. Okay, that solar guy says, so Socrates hated democracy for a reason. No, that's a little over my head. That solar guy. Okay, Average Joe. Feeding Our Future, a Minnesota nonprofit, was found to have stolen hundreds of millions in COVID relief funds during the Biden administration. 78 suspects have been indicted, including the ringleader, Amy Bach, a white lady, and 50 have pled guilty. That all tracks, Average Joe. Let's see here. Somebody with no profile picture or name says, do you lean left or right? I lean left. Space Plum says, no one suppresses free speech like MAGA. That is accurate. Space Plum, 80% of what money? Benda was referring to money from the fellow with the islands. John Abbott, I see you guys here. See y'all here. My apologies, as always, to the YouTube and Twitch channels for not giving them as much love as the TikTok channel, but things are always popping off over there, and so sometimes I have trouble refocusing over here. And if anybody has any suggestions for how I can do that better, I would appreciate that. All right, everybody. That's going to be it for me today. I hope that everybody has a great Monday and a great week. And I hope that everybody out there does the work of trying to help and tries to be productive and engaging with the people in our country so that we can have better political conversations, perhaps a better government, and perhaps a better country. We don't have to live like this, guys. We can have a better life. So let's all get out there and do the work to make that happen. And if you don't know what to do, then check out my Discord or send me a DM, because that's what I'm here for, guys. I'm here to help you do that work specifically. So do the work, be good to each other, be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow, same bat time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. Goodbye. 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 Good.